And this conversation is one about how moving from NLU to Gen AI is different.
I do think anyone can make a chatbot, but not everyone can make a great chatbot.
It's really easy to have high containment, which is you just stop the ability to escalate to an agent. Simple as that.
So actually, this is really interesting because we've kind of flipped it on our head, how we measure success.
It got me thinking about how bad design in conversational AI makes it extremely challenging to recover from errors.
So we're now just focusing on making sure that the bot is able to have a very natural conversation using generative AI, triaging the person's problem.
An AI solution is part of the customer journey. It's not the entire thing.
Yeah, that's a huge question. I think that so many people are getting used to how chatbots work, how AI works. And I think that just, once you've lost someone's trust with your chatbot, you've sort of lost them forever, I think.
Just a quick one before we get into the podcast. I need to tell you about this white paper that we've just done with Decagon. You've probably come across Decagon. It's recently raised its Series D, $250 million at a $4.5 billion valuation. It was also recently featured in OpenAI's Frontier Builders segment, the only CX company to be featured. OpenAI has identified Decagon as one to watch at the bleeding edge of what's possible when it comes to CX automation using AI. This white paper is specifically for businesses that need to handle sudden or planned surges in demand. If you think about retailers around Black Friday, insurance companies around renewal periods, travel companies around the school holidays, even when something happens that's unpredictable, like there's an airline strike and the airline receives a sudden spike in demand. This white paper highlights how you can leverage AI to cope with those sudden surges in demand. There's 8 use cases there, 8 ways that AI can help. There's 2 case studies from Decagon clients who have been doing this exact thing, using AI to manage surge, spikes in demand and scale. And you can find out exactly how you can do it for your business if you just go to vux.la/scale. vux.la/scale. SCALE. And you can download that white paper right now. This episode is with Alia Azim. Alia is the product lead for chatbots at Citation Group. Now, Citation Group is essentially kind of like a HR company that you can contract to handle all of your HR matters. If you're a small business, medium-sized business, and you don't want to bring in a full HR team, then you can use Citation Group and as a platform where it'll help you get done all of your HR stuff. Now, Alia runs the product side for the conversational AI components of that platform. And this conversation is one about how moving from NLU to Gen AI is different, what's required in building a Gen AI chatbot for customer support, the lessons learned and what skills and traits from the previous world of conversation design still apply in today's world, what the main kind of roles and responsibilities are for building Gen AI conversational agents. We talk a lot about the role of conversation design as well, and there's been a lot of stuff around the last kind of year or so around conversation design rather is dead. We discuss whether that is or isn't the case. They're using Intercom. Recently I had Fergal Reid from Intercom on the podcast, so it's been really interesting to hear from a company that's using the product and hearing a little bit more about what it makes easy and what it makes difficult. So this is a great conversation. Alia has got lots of experience, ex-Lloyds Banking Group, lots of experience in conversational AI. This is a conversation that I'm sure you will learn a lot from, as I did. So without further ado, this is Alia Azim on VUX World. Alia, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Definitely keen to hear your perspectives and learnings at Citation Group and all the wonderful things you're working on with AI. How has the year started so far then in terms of your progress and AI agenda?
Yeah, so it's been really, really busy, I guess. So pretty much since we all came back to work, it's been, we're going to transform all of these different like operations or these operation teams and have the bot, handle a bunch of our queries. And we, immediately from day one, we had a roadmap, had these are the bots we want to target this year. These are the companies who either have a bot or don't, or have a bot, but it's not a great bot. Yeah, so it's pretty much been hitting the ground running since January. It's
Nice.
been stressful but fun.
As it always is. For those then who might not be familiar, because you kind of alluded to it there in terms of like different brands and stuff like that, can you share a little bit about Citation Group and what it does?
Yeah, so when I was applying to this role, I googled citation, and in my interview, I couldn't even say what citation did. So that was really fun. But it's sort of like, I guess the mission statement thereabouts is helping companies do their best work.
Hmm.
So we own a bunch of companies which are to do with like checking if one of your potential employees has anything that might come up, like DBS checks. We
Oh yeah.
do I think right to work checks, stuff like that. Also do health and safety. So if you've got a company and you need to do some health and safety risk assessments by law, we provide that. It's pretty much everything that I think a business owner would need all in one. So
Mm.
it's very varied, but also very like mandatory. That's how I would describe citation.
Yeah, it's kind of like if I'm right in understanding, it's a bit like so for us, we have a company that essentially like handles our HR and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
contracting and health and safety and all that kind of stuff. So rather than you like employing a bunch of people to do all of that stuff, you could take advantage of those type of services provided by companies like Citation. Am I in the right kind of lines?
yeah, exactly that. It's I kind of liken it to Workday, but it's a bit more, and it's got a bit more of a personal touch.
Hmm.
So we do everything from like the HR side of things to like the mandatory things like um, the risk assessments. But I do think citation has a face, and so that's why the chatbot has been really important. And it's a northern company as well. So I think one of the most important things is just how human our brand is. We support small to medium business size businesses, um, and yeah, you people have the number and they're so happy to call us up or so happy to email us, and that's because of the outstanding like customer service that we offer.
Mm.
So while I see Workday as this like thing for big organizations and very impersonal, very quick and gets a lot done, we're sort of a bit more involved in our clients and their journey. So it's a bit more, yeah, a bit more friendly.
Nice, nice. Yeah. So when you say it's a northern company, does that mean that all of your AI interactions start with "A up, Chuck"?
You know what? It's really funny because all my colleagues are northern, and I've got this thing where I keep making jokes about being southern. Um, I do think that when I'm like when we go through the chat flows and when we had a more of a scripted bot, you know, I was told specifically from the marketing team that we needed to make it more friendly and more northern sounding. So we had like stuff like hey rather than hi, and the small stuff like that that made it seem a bit more friendly and a bit more personal. um so yeah, so it's funny. There's like a funny north south divide um, within citation as well.
Nice. And so what's the kind of like use cases then for Citation Group? You've got a lot of different companies there. You mentioned chatbot a few times. Can you share, what the current setup looks like in terms of AI usage, conversational AI, stuff like that?
Yeah, so at the moment, so we're moving from sort of like NLU based bots. So for this, we've got a lot of stuff going on in the AI space, but specifically for conversational AI, we're moving away from natural language based bots. Anything that requires, um, I would say, like overthought. So I think sometimes with natural language bots, there's this inclination to make sure we've covered all branches, to make sure you've covered all entities. Have you actually um, in the response, are you saying everything that every different customer could possibly need an answer to? Um, so yeah, so we're moving away from that and we're looking more into having more generative AI in our responses. And we don't have to worry about overthinking and thinking about if our answers are perfect. If the answer is perfect for like everyone, is it really helpful? What we've seen is it isn't. So if you've got this massive umbrella answer, so we're now just focusing on making sure that the bot is able to have a very natural conversation using generative AI, triaging the person's problem. So asking them, could you please explain a little bit more so I can actually help you? And then focusing more on our knowledge, building out our knowledge banks, and making sure that the experts are able to own that and make sure, because they know they deal with the clients every day, so they're the ones that are owning the documentation and owning the knowledge banks and making sure that they're up to scratch and making sure that they're as wide as possible, rather than having one massive response or one massive document which contains everything. It's more about the breadth.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, what you're getting at there is that, some of the kind of NLU based chatbots, given the nature of that technology, is that you have to try and capture a high level, broad intent and distill it down into one response.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can vary the response based on entities, but it's not necessarily highly contextual, is it? It's basically, was the intent triggered? Was the entity captured? Yes, it was. There's the response. Or did we broadly speaking catch the intent? Yes, we did. Okay, there's the generic response or the full response that caters for everyone. Whereas with generative AI, because it's a lot more contextual and semantically kind of richer, what you retrieve is highly dependent on the specifics of how the question is asked. Therefore, an answer might be the same question phrased 25 different ways that might get 25 slightly different responses, but more contextual to the user's query, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of where this worked really well, actually. We had we've got like a bank of knowledge that we're improving all the time. And one of them is about downloading the Google Authenticator app or an Authenticator app to get in and use multi-factor authentication. And someone just came in and asked, I can't get in. So the bot replied, and we're using the intercom bot, which is around a wrapper over Claude. So we have this knowledge article which explains everything depending on which iOS, if you're using iOS or you're using Google. The customer comes back and says, I'm not paying for another app. And then the bot comes back and says, oh, Google Authenticator is completely free. You don't need to pay for it. So it's like we've made the article so fluid, not fluid, but like so broad enough to cover any different types of topics that a user might ask, but also at the same time we're not handling that. We're letting the bot handle all those follow-up questions and all that triaging and all those concerns that a person might have. So that, I guess, in the old world, that's something that we would have had to script and predict and had to write up and create an intent for someone asking a follow-up question. But we just now leave it to the bot to decide where is the customer coming from? Is the customer confused? The guy sounded a bit angry, so the bot came back and was really reassuring. So yeah.
That's really good. I think those long tail sort of like back and forths. That's was the art and science of what conversation design was in the
Yeah.
NLU days, wasn't it? It's like you've got to predict. What if someone says they're not happy about paying for another app? And I reckon that would be an example where someone would bring that up on a workshop, and everyone else would be like, "No one's ever going to ask that, so let's not even bother." You know, those
Yeah.
1 in 100 conversations that you just don't have time to design for is all handled, isn't it?
Yeah. And I remember when I was working on like a big NLU bot, and you'd have to collect like the most common queries or the most common examples that someone would ask. But in reality, people are much less forthcoming when they're talking to a chatbot, and they just, there might be a majority of people that talk in a specific way, but actually people are really lazy and they just sort of like will type out as many capital letters and words that they can be bothered putting down. But that's that should be okay. Like they should still be able to get an answer. And I think that's what we've really seen the differences night and day, moving from trying to have constant review sessions with stakeholders and trying to get them to go through the chats and give us what's the most common way of people saying something, to now what just automatically decides, I think I know, I think this is what you're talking about, and does it really well. So yeah, so I think the fact that it's so hands off is great. All we need to do is focus on making sure that our information in our knowledge base is accurate, and everything else is, yeah, pretty much just done automatically.
And so what would the we've got a flavor for some of the use cases there in terms of, to log in, some people need access to authenticator and there's a bit of a troubleshooting kind of nature. Is this for kind of like, is the target user of this service the business owners and business people who
Yes.
might want an answer about a HR query or something like that? Is that correct?
Well, yeah, we've decided to sort of pivot and make sure that our platform support area is the best. So we're spending all of our energy working on that, making sure people can use the platform, making sure that they don't have to, like, simple stuff really. So I guess we've whittled it down to something really not complex, making sure the use case is really tight. Um, you could last year ask questions about HR, but it wasn't landing as well as the stuff about the platform. And I think what I've realized is the tighter the use case, the better the outcome really is, because you really know what problem you're solving for. Before, we were sort of solving for any sort of query that we saw coming in, and anything that people were asking about, we were like, we must help them. Like, they are asking a question, we've got to help them. But when you take it back to the basics and you think, actually, what are they here on this platform to do? We want to be a very small part of that journey. We want them to actually use the platform and pay for the service, use the service they're paying for. So yeah, so it's mainly about, can I where can I find the document store, for example? How do I add a user? How do I book a holiday? Those sort of queries. And even though it's sort of a small pool of queries, we are just making sure it's sort of the best experience that they can have, and not adding friction into something which, they're already trying to sort out a HR thing with their company. They're small business owners. They probably don't have much time. So I think it's really good that we've sort of anchored back down to the foundations, which is, we're primarily just trying to remove the friction for everyone.
Yeah, that makes sense. So essentially, the target here then is it's almost the opposite, I suppose, of some chatbots which want to increase engagement and do as much as they can and end-to-end kind of like use cases and stuff like that. Whereas in your case, it seems as though people use it because they're stuck. You want to get them unstuck and then back on their way.
Basically, I think it's really important to be the to try, like, I think it's really easy when you're in a chatbot team to think this is the best, coolest technology ever, and this is, I think we're all guilty of that because we're a bit nerdy and we love how it works. So I think it's very easy to get caught up in that cycle where you're like, no, this is going to be amazing, like, people are going to be so impressed by this, but actually in reality, like, this is a very small slice of someone's day. And I think trying to make it complicated or trying to keep them in the channel for reasons other than what the channel is supposed to do, like, resolve queries about the platform, I think that just adds to the overall user experience of the company. So yeah, so I think the thing I've realized is that reminding yourself that you're just a small part of that user's journey is really important. Because there's so many things I'd love to do with the chatbot, but I just know that we just want to make it as simple as possible for the users. And yeah, it's actually quite effective, and we get, we're very, like, I think over half of the queries that have been surveyed are surveyed at either fours or fives. So that's on the CSAT scale, and yeah, for me that's quite impressive because yeah, it's very easy for someone to get annoyed when they can't do something and then rate it, even though they're not angry at the bot, they're angry at the fact they can't do it.
Mm.
and give it a one or a two. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think having context over the fact that in all cases, an AI solution is part of the customer journey. It's not the entire
Yeah.
thing. And I think that, yeah, you're right. I think that often gets missed, that really is like, how can you make this in the context of the wider journey the best possible experience? It's interesting then that because we've got some examples, some use cases where that's also the purpose of the chatbot is to understand the intent, verify the user, and then essentially help them get to the right place where they need to actually go and do the thing rather than do the thing. I think there's value in doing the thing if it's the right use case, but at the same time, if the user completes their task and you've helped, then that's the whole point. So I wonder how you kind of approach measuring success when you are purposefully part of the journey? Do you approach measuring success as how do we justify the contribution? Are there any specific things that you look out for given where you sit in the journey?
Yeah, so actually this is really interesting because we've kind of flipped it on our head that how we measure success. And I find this really, really like because you've got so many parties that have like a stake in it. You've got the customer who like just wants to get their thing done. Then you've got obviously like the business teams, which are like, we're paying for this, so we need to see some return on it. And then we're seeing the support teams who are like, we don't want any more tickets. This shouldn't just be a channel into us. Um, and then there's like obviously the AI teams, and we're like, guys, this is cool. We should just add all the cool stuff. Um, so there's so many different parts of like, how do you measure the success of this bot? So I know containment has been like the traditional way that you measure the success of a bot. And when I joined Citation, the thing I took from Lloyd's was we're going to use containment because that is the gold standard measure, and we did that for about a year. But what we were really, and we had quite a good containment rate in the 80 pluses. That was fabulous. But what we weren't really looking at is we were seeing this high number, and we're like, wow, it's you know really consistently high, and it's getting higher the more content we add. But are we actually helping? And we're reviewing chats, and the chats are sort of confirming our bias that okay, the chats aren't actually going to a person. This is fabulous. This is great. Um, but at the end of the day, as the end user, and the CSAT scores were not as good as what we've got currently. Um, they were actually with that, you could see that the customer was leaving, probably going to bounce through another channel, probably going to go and email the email they've got with them or the phone number they've called throughout the past year. So we're not really changing their behavior anyway. We're not making them interested. So what we started to do is use the resolution rate.
Hmm.
So we started that thing like at some point last year, we started looking at resolution rate, and this year, that's our main focus. Um, we want our chats to be actually resolving, and the way that's calculated in our bot is: was the customer's response positive, and do we like has it classed what? So Intercom looks at it as was the response positive, and have has the user got their answer? So it kind of looks at the total conversation, not just different parts of it. So not just the last bit of the conversation, the whole end. Did they come back and ask a follow up, for example, and did they end up getting what they wanted? And actually, it's a bit difficult to have those conversations about resolution rate because that doesn't really translate. Because as I was talking, I could hear myself sound a bit fluffy. It doesn't really translate to much. It sort of says, great, the customer had a great experience, but what do you want me to do with that? I mean, at the end of the day, what we should start seeing over time is that the support tickets should start dropping. Customers should stay with us. They should, choose the chatbot as their channel of choice rather than picking up the phone. And we should start to see that over time. And I think it's kind of just having a little bit of faith that this is going to work and explaining that to everyone. It's like, I know it's not exactly like, it's a number, it's the resolution rate, but it's not exactly something as easy to define as did it go to an agent or did it not? It's did the customer get the answer that they were looking for? And I think that is definitely a challenge, but I think will pay off in the long term. So
Yeah. I mean, my bugbear with containment that I've had for years, and I think I wrote about this in 2021 or 2022, which was that it's really easy to have high containment, which is you just stop
Yeah.
ability to escalate to an agent. Simple as that. You don't fix any issues that you've got with your conversation. Just keep sending users round and round and round in circles until they get frustrated and leave. It's like what I think of when people talk about containment. Really, they're conflating abandonment and resolution rate.
Yeah.
Some of them are resolved, some of them are abandoned. And when you put it both as containment, you have no idea which is which. So your 80% containment figure could have been 60% abandoned,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
20% contained or resolved. But having just the general containment doesn't, I don't think, do it justice. But it's interesting in your case because you've got kind of like the resolution rate for you is localized, I'm assuming, which is that you want to know the resolution rate of the chat, as in, did we answer a question successfully, which you can, make predictions about based on the conversation, and retrieval accuracy and this, that, and the other. If you want to have an explicit kind of like yes or no kind of like user kind of voting scheme or whatever, then you can do. But I suppose in your case, you also presumably want to have an understanding that what the chat has done, what the AI agent in the chat has done, it's actually helped the user achieve the goal. Because there's
Yeah.
there's no point in you answering six questions in the chat, but the user's actually not achieved their goal on the site. I just wonder
Yeah.
if you've got anything that ties those two things together where you can point to a conversation in the chat and you can point to a resolution on the platform to then prove that the chatbot is actually,
Yeah. We
done.
started looking at the actual like topics. So for each like topic area. So one of our biggest ones, and I'm sure this is a big one for like most platforms out there, logging in issues.
Yeah.
So um, logging in issues, obviously like really repeatable query that we can get the chatbot to handle. We don't need a person to tell them to click a link and go and reset their password, or this is where you find your verification code. So what we do is we every month we look at the number of Salesforce tickets. So Salesforce tickets is our main way of like um, how we handle like our main CRM, how we handle all the requests, versus how many of that topic did the chatbot handle.
Hmm.
And you can see that the chatbot is handling a bulk of those queries, the logging in issues. So it's the same approach we're looking to apply um, to all the other topic areas that we've got. But logging in issues is the main like thing that's that we can actually make a difference with the chatbot, and we're seeing that as well. We're seeing that um, that it's not just handling the basic ones where you'd have to reset your password, you need to do X, Y, and Z. There are some people who are actually asking follow-up questions, and the chatbot is handling that, and that's contributing to our resolution rate further because it's actually trying to diagnose rather than just give an answer that's a cookie cutter answer. I genuinely might have something on my account that is stopping me from um, logging in. So it sort of can get down to that level with the person. So that's pretty handy.
Mm, that's nice, yeah. You mentioned earlier that what's been interesting from your point of view is compared to NLU based bots, this is more hands off. I wonder whether you can describe what you mean by hands off and what it entails in terms of your role in your team when it comes to actually designing and building these things.
Yeah. So th- this is really interesting actually because I spent so many years doing NLU bots. Um, and it's really hard to get your head around the fact that not only your job, but say the job of a designer, a job of a chatbot trainer, chatbot reviewer, that whole thing sort of is disrupted. Um, and I know people say that chatbot that chatbots are going to disrupt their own industry, but actually, as a person working on chatbots, it definitely disrupts your own as well. So yeah, so I feel like the so how it sort of impacted my like how I work is not just I don't have to sit with the stakeholders anymore and talk through um flows. I used to bring up a like a diagram of the flow and sort of walk through, okay, so based on these chats, what do we think needs to improve? Like I give my opinion, and it's a very analysis heavy. That's already done. That decisioning's already done within the chatbot. So, you know, we don't have to anymore. We go through chats, obviously, like we want to see what's happening with the customer. But we don't have to I don't have to sit there with a whole flow and look through the rigid parts of the flow. I just have to sort of shape and train the AI. And also, work with my stakeholders to make sure that the AI is shaped well. So we add loads of things called guidance in. The guidance is really interesting because you can, obviously, it's like adding to a massive prompt to say how the bot should respond. And if we think the bot's a bit too harsh, for example, with some of its responses, we'll just add some guidance in and make sure that it's responding in a way we think users want based on the chats. It's very much like holding the hand of the AI rather than telling the AI what to do, if that makes sense, like programming it. We don't need to program it anymore. We don't need to give it very explicit instructions. We just have to give it some guidance and say, this is the outcome we want. Help us get there. So yeah, it has changed quite a lot, and I think it's a bit scary as well. Like when you think about the future of sort of like chatbot jobs and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's it's a bit more of a hands off. It's changed. The way it's changed is it's a little bit more hands off, and it's a bit more. You do have to have your knowledge from working on NLU bots and working on chatbots in general, and you do have to have that understanding of how the bot is working, what the user experience is. But I would say it's more about holding AI's hand. It sounds really weird. And sort of just guiding it where to go rather than telling it.
Yeah. And how much of that do you think is down to Intercom versus the technology? Because I had Fergal Reid from Intercom. I think he was a global AI director. He was on a couple of weeks back. And he shared something which I thought was quite interesting about Intercom, which is that Intercom is very opinionated about how it should work, less opinionated about the specifics of what it should do. So, for example, you give it your knowledge and your guidance and your policies and your rules, and it's fine with that. But in terms of how you go about designing and configuring the actual experience itself, apparently, according to Fergal, Intercom is a lot more opinionated about that, so therefore there's less control for the end user.
Yeah.
How much of what you've just explained there is down to technology choice versus generative AI's inherent value, should we say?
Yeah, there's a bit of both really. So I've worked on very customizable bots. I've worked on like Watson, like you can shape it however you want to shape it. It's an NLU bot. I don't know how they're using Gen AI at the moment because I've not looked at it. But when I look at Intercom, you don't need to be an expert in chatbots, which I think is actually so great because the platform itself is very rigid. It almost feels like a designer's created it, which I think is actually great because it feels like it's intuitive. It explains, this is the inbox, this is the workflow, and it's set up as like as the workflows which are sort of tailored around a customer journey. So it's not about a person hitting a node. It's more about what is this person doing to trigger this specific action. And I think Intercom does a really good job at making sure that you don't need to be fine-tuned in understanding chatbots, and you don't need to have spent 6 years on like working on it. You just have to understand that this is a user. What are they trying? What's the outcome? What are you trying to get them to do? Ask a question, raise a ticket, talk to a person, whatever it is. It's really easy. It's in black and white. And I like how restrictive the platform is as well. So you're not too, I think you get a lot of requests from external like stakeholders who want to do like really interesting stuff. But you start to realize that Intercom has its limits. but it's a good thing because you're not then having to manage this really complicated big piece of, like, I don't know, massive flow or this massive complicated thing. And anyone can pick it up. I know that if I can't, well, I'm not there one day to do stuff, that someone else can come in and figure it out. So it's not too difficult to learn, and I think it keeps us productive. It makes sure that I'm not just the only bottleneck, or it doesn't need to go to a developer, for example, to do anything because everything's in the UI. So I think a lot of it is down to Intercom, and explaining that, add this guidance into your responses. And yeah, I do feel like Intercom works really well with the Fin AI and really helps us get stuff done quickly. So it's good.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. That I come across I think about it being Braden Ream from VoiceFlow who mentioned something recently, which was like over time the goal of VoiceFlow, and I think Intercom is the same, which is that over time you want to increase the amount of people that can do this. So for any technology provider like Intercom, the easier it is to do, the more people can do it. Therefore, their total addressable market increases. Therefore, they can sell more, and their business can grow, etc., etc. And it's kind of getting to the point, I suppose, like with Intercom, where in being quite opinionated about how the platform works, you can then enable far more people to get up and running successfully. So I suppose the question is, you referenced earlier on about, generative AI disrupting the chatbot space and the chatbot builders and designers and stuff like that, which I definitely agree with. And there's been this kind of like long running debate around, where is the value of conversation design as it was? Is there any value in it, type of thing? And the future of this kind of technology. I wonder what your thoughts are in terms of like, is designing and building chatbots going to be open to absolutely anybody to do successfully at scale? Do you think there's any kind of like particular skill sets or experience left that is crucial for this kind of work now, based on your experience? What do you think?
That's a huge question. Yeah, I often think about this, because I feel like so many people are, since the dawn of ChatGPT, I think so many people are getting used to how chatbots work, how AI works. That it's this new thing that everyone's learning. I I do think there is a role. There is still a space for the specialists, so the chatbot engineers, the chatbot designers, because I do think there is something where, okay, everyone can do it, but is everyone like that interested in it? Are they that interested in the customer journey? Are they interested in creating this agent which is going to help you through your journey through that company, whatever it is? Because anyone can make, I do think anyone can make a chatbot, but not everyone can make a great chatbot. So even if it is accessible, um, I think the people that are really interested in it and the people that are interested in creating the best customer journey for people through the bot, I think there's still space for those people. And I think it might just not be as segregated. I think that having in the old world where you did have parts of the process, like the design stage, the build phase, I think what you're going to probably see is like a couple of people with sort of like a T-shaped role where people have a lot of the design elements to their role, a lot of the engineering understanding, because we're still going to have to do stuff within bots as well. Like it's not just going to have to be a text summarization. There's still room for us to be able to actually action things and be a bit more agentic. And I think that's where the skill set sort of shifts into being a bit more specific, but also everyone does a bit of everything. Because there isn't really like a part of the process anymore. There isn't really a design phase and there isn't really a build phase. It is just all it's sort of like, yeah, like have we set this up correctly? Is this achieving the goals that we want to? Are we setting the right goals? And those are things that I think only your designers or people who are, I guess, traditionally your chatbot builders can actually have have a very strong input on. Um, and I've seen it when you don't involve those people in the initial conversations, even in this new world where you've got um, generative AI chatbots. The chatbot still falls on its face, and it still needs those people with those skill sets intervention at some point. Because yeah, like I come back down to it, anyone can build a bot, but I think there's some people who can build great bots. And yeah, if you want to see that return on investment and you want to see, um, you know, your customers coming back and reusing that channel, those people are still required.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think you can tell a little bit like you could tell in the NLU days when something was just built by a developer and it didn't have a designer's touch on it.
yeah,
You could tell
definitely.
immediately because it like functionally worked, but you can't paint outside the lines. And if you get stuck down one tree, you could never get through to somewhere else. There was always these little telltale signs of poor design.
Yeah,
I think that the same is true of Gen AI, and I always call it the full stop problem, which is, going back to your kind of notion around having an appreciation for the customer journey and knowing that you're part of the journey, and then being able to, in the context of that journey, serve users as best as possible. And I think a symptom of having a lack of understanding of the customer journey is what I call a full stop problem, which is essentially where an AI agent or a chatbot is fundamentally just a RAG tool and it just searches data and gives answers, but doesn't do the things that you've explained a couple of times here, which is if someone has a response, which is, I don't want to download an app and pay for it, it can respond to that contextually, or one that understands that, if you're in a certain type of, let's say that the example I always use is a telco who has a question from a user, something like, how do I upgrade my phone contract?
mm,
A typical kind of like RAG response to that will just be an instruction about how to do it. Rather than if a designer had their eye on that, they'd be thinking, right, well, this intent is contracting upgrade. The user wants to know how. So, yes, we might answer the question and tell them how, but also we then want to ask, let's get you logged in and see how long you got left on your contract, or have you found a phone that you're interested in, or what something to take the conversation further to get the user towards their goal. So my perspective is that the technology makes things easier. What's lacking in my experience is the imagination around how this thing
yeah.
could be more useful in the journey.
And that's exactly spot on. I think it is the imagination. I think if you're coming from like sort of the untrained eye perspective, you just want to get something out the door. You want to prove your value, make sure you've got something in front of customers so that you're not being hammered with like loads of support tickets, right? But you're right, like the reason those people call you up or email you is because they want the human touch. They want that empathy, that like, I'm listening, I understand you, and wait, we're going to get to the bottom of this before I put the phone down. And I think that's what Gen AI bots do very well, but they do them very well when you have the right people on it. It's not like you said, like you get. I think you can have an answer, a response, and it can give you that, but it's not got someone who's aware of how the bot could be responding. Is the person aware of the whole and understanding that customer journey, having empathy with that user trying to resolve their query? And I think that is the customer expectation where they get that personal touch, the empathy from the customer service advisor, wanting that from a chatbot, not getting that. And then you're in the cycle of they're not using the chatbot. We're not getting them to use this really expensive tool that we've put on our website. So yeah, so I think it is like you can tell night and day the bots that have had um the design touch on them, but the ones that haven't, that you're just speaking to a brick wall, you feel like you're speaking to a brick wall. um yeah, and I think that just once you've lost someone's trust with your chatbot, you've sort of lost them forever. I think it's really hard to gain it back. um People just don't like knowing that they're talking to a robot, I guess, or not knowing that they're talking to a robot. They don't like feeling like they're talking to something that doesn't care about the issue they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I saw a post from Oh, that I forgot the guy's name now. It's going to kill me because I follow all of his content. He's absolutely spot on. Nick. He's called Nick. Go on, tell me what your second name is. Nick. Anyway, he works at Microsoft. He's a absolutely sound as a pound guy. Let me find him. Anyway, it's gone. But basically, he posted something. I'll find out. My apologies already. I'll find out, and I will put his LinkedIn in the show notes because he's a super switch on guy. But basically, he posted something the other day which was around design and how the essentially the sorry, I'm just trying to search for it now because I feel bad for not really not remembering his second name. Anyway, design essentially the thing he posted was something along the lines of design. Good design is all about encouraging exploration and not punishing errors, something like that. Put simply, and it got me thinking about how bad design in conversational AI makes it extremely challenging to recover from errors. I say something you don't understand me, you just say sorry, I don't understand it. So how do I recover from that? And then it's preventative in terms of exploration because now I daren't try something else now because you don't understand what I've said. So it's kind of like the design element for me, as well as all the things we've spoke about, is also to make the interface as easy to use as possible, which is all about not punishing mistakes and allowing the user to be open to exploration.
Yeah, I remember in the bot we had before this bot, I remember adding in the fallback message, which was like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And it's just so cold. And I know, and like you could see I could see the other person replying um with like anger and like all caps. Um and then because of that, we had to then add in a new intent for frustration. So we
Yeah.
actually had to keep building for this fact that we don't have enough knowledge for you to we couldn't keep up obviously with like the amount of intents we had to keep churning out, so we had to put a backstop in, and then because of the backstop we had to put in something to pick up that they were frustrated, to tell them not to do that, and then we put in something to stop them from swearing. So there's like, it's like you keep kind of what do you call it, like, yeah, like patching up this thing which is not really, if we should have spent energy really on like trying to figure out how do we expand the intents, but really we didn't have the capacity to keep churning the intents out. So it's like this like chicken and egg scenario. It's like, do we just keep saying sorry, or um do we stop that for a minute and try and get all these intents out? uh,
Mm.
and building intents is really labor intensive. Like, you've got to script them, design them in citation. We have to get them through marketing, like make sure that the copy was ready for a person to see. And yeah, it's quite a long process, but we don't have any of that now. We can just keep focusing on delivering bots and delivering content and making sure the content is great, basically, and the bot
Yeah.
does all the rest.
Absolutely. Nick Sargent, that's his name. Apologies, Nick, because I do follow your every word, honestly. Nick Sargent, that's where I got it from. Anyway, yeah, so we've talked a lot about kind of like guidance and stuff like that. Is there any use cases in there that are kind of action oriented? Any
Um,
plans for that or no?
well, we want to start looking at action based responses for the bot. Um, but I think the hard thing and the challenge is which one is the most valuable to go for. So we obviously have like a really broad range of clients. So it's kind of, we need to figure where we're at the moment is like, we need to figure out what we're trying to do at the moment, I guess, is map out some of the most frustrating points in their journey. And we can see that through the chat. So we've had the chatbot, our main chatbot, running for a couple of months now. So we've got enough data to see what are they actually asking. And, to the point we can only give them an answer and tell them to go on their way and do it. But there might be some cases where we can actually action it. Um, but yeah, so we're at this like sort of critical point where we've got it live. We know what they're asking for. We just need to map out actually which one would help you the most. So yeah, so I think that's the hardest thing, I think, because you're like, everything would be helpful, but you've only got like a team of one basically. um, and yeah, and a very small project team that can actually make this happen. So being smart about it, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes you can spend a lot of time over analyzing as well though, which is, if the goal is to head down that direction at some point, then maybe you don't have to find the biggest nut to crack. Maybe you can find something that's small enough for you to handle with limited resources, prove the value there, use that as a way of extending capabilities and all that kind of stuff. There's two ways of coming at it, isn't it? Like, I think that, yeah, most of the time you'd advise go for the heavy hitters, and even if you solve half of that problem, you'll have a big impact. But at the same time, if you're trying to prove the business case and prove value, sometimes you can just start with the opposite way.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting time as well because I think like I do think that the chatbot market of like what people have, I thought it would be further along than it is. So I thought that like um more companies would be embracing Gen AI chatbots. Um, but yeah, like it feels like that's the point that everyone needs to get to first and then start. So I do feel like we're a bit ahead of the curve, really. We're starting to look at actually some of the action orientated stuff and like where we can actually do stuff with the customer. But yeah, a lot of I did think at this point, having been a few years into the whole chat GPT stuff, that a lot more companies would be using Gen AI. So yeah, so I do think that even the customer expectations are just they are getting more and more, they're ramping up and that people are expecting summarized answers and clever responses. Um, but yeah, so it's quite an interesting place to be, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the customer expectations are only going one way, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
The more that ChatGPT can do, the more that Claude can do, the more that Gemini can do, all of a sudden the expectations kind of rise. I concur with what you're saying, which is I'd have thought that more companies would have done more sooner. But to
Yeah.
be honest, I've been saying that since 2018. It's like the opportunity is right there. It's blindingly obvious. The technology was ready in 2018 in terms of NLU. There's a lot that you could accomplish with NLU. Obviously, there's more that you can accomplish now with Gen AI. So it's like the technology's only got better. And it just puzzles me why every company on the planet isn't doing this. It's mad.
I think there's a what I've noticed there's a lot of like bots that go direct to live chat. I find that really interesting. Like maybe the customer service that they're offering is just a person, but then a person's quite limited, right? Like the person can only answer chats 9 to 5. What are you going to do with the rest of the time? And what if the person can't answer? Like, I feel like I find it quite interesting, yeah, that still companies would have the live chat option. It maybe feels like the risk tolerance it might be a little lower. I don't know, but yeah, I'm finding it quite interesting. But people really enjoy like the bot that we have at the moment. They really like having a talking to it and trying to get to the root of the issue. So at the point of handover, we already like the bot's already done a bit of a triage and we know actually we can just go ahead and create that ticket and send it off to line 2, or we can go ahead and sort that out. We can create the tickets itself, to be fair.
Mm.
um but yeah, so it's a very interesting sort of like landscape for chatbots.
It is, yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, I think, yeah, I definitely concur with that. And yeah, I don't know really. I mean, I would say that live chat, having AI instead of live chat, as at least at the beginning, is only really a win-win because how many great live chat experiences have you ever had?
I feel like I have such beef with live chat.
I've never had a great. I don't think I've ever had a great experience with live chat. Even when I've had something resolved for me over a live chat, and even if the person who I'm speaking to has been perfectly sound and has actually genuinely helped me, even in that case, it's probably taken me 30 minutes to get through to them. The
Yeah.
responses have probably taken 5 minutes every time they respond to me. So even if it's not the person and the service, it's the logistics and the operation of the whole experience is still just terrible.
Yeah, for me the biggest issue is okay, I've got through to you, but you're going to leave me hanging there, and I'm going to have to sit on this web page, and I'm probably on my phone, so I want to do other things for like 5 minutes. So I'm just sat there, like literally, like looking at it, hoping I don't refresh it or I don't accidentally get click on a notification that pops down. So I feel like the worst part about live chat is that the people solving it are great. They actually solve the issue, but it's the fact that, yeah, like I'm having to wait so long in between messages because, yeah, I guess obviously like a person can't handle too many concurrent tickets.
Mm.
So yeah, I've never had a good experience with live chat.
No. And the thing is, as well, the live chat vendors will tell you that it's great because you can have like 15 conversations at the same time. But I think it was, excuse me, it might have been Nationwide that did this study. Nationwide or HSBC, one of the two. They found that do you know what the optimum number of concurrent chats that an agent can handle successfully without negatively impacting CSAT?
I want to go with 15 because you said 50.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe 10. Yeah.
two.
No, that is bad.
Yeah. So all these companies that do live chats, like yeah, you can have 15 conversations going at any one time, but apparently, according to that, I have to dig it out. I'm pretty sure it was HSBC or Nationwide found that the maximum number of chats one agent can handle without negatively impacting CSAT was two.
And to be fair, from an agent perspective, like, do you really want to be answering boring queries like all the time, every day? Like, I don't think that is very fulfilling.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially if like I think I would get really annoyed because if someone's asking me the same question and I'm just hearing it multiple times, I don't think I could handle the yeah. Um and a lot of the time it's really simple stuff like people are not seeing buttons or they're not clicking into stuff. So yeah, that's crazy. Two chats is
makes it pointless, doesn't it?
yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're going to implement live chat so that you can handle two chats successfully at the same time, but you're not going to implement AI that could handle 10,000 chats at the same time. I don't know. It's mad.
Like
Some
mad.
businesses are strange. Anyway. Anyway, Alia, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great conversation, and yeah, I'm glad that you have having good success over there. Hopefully, when we get some actions up there and we've got some more learnings, we can come back and do it all again.
Definitely.
Appreciate it. Nice one, and thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you again on the next one. Cheers now. Bye.